let's talk about some risks of AI that I'm really not hearing anybody talk about, but seem really important to me. So, for a little context, I'm not an AI doomer. I'm not like, oh, everything about AI is terrible and I hate it and I would never use it. Sure, there's a bunch of maybe ethical questions about how we got AI, but it is here. And I use AI and I use it to help me write code and I use it for personal stuff in my life too. It's actually pretty helpful in lots of different ways, although I don't think that it can do all of my job in 5 seconds from now, but that remains to be seen and a topic for a different video. But just like any other technology, it's a double-edged sword. There's some good things about it and there's some bad things about it, and or potentially bad things that maybe, if we're talking about it and working on it, we can avoid having happen. So let's talk about one of those today. My first sort of concern here is default answers for LLMs become a sort of de facto standard. If you try and do make me a to-do list app, the odds are pretty good, at least on a fresh account. I tried this on Claude myself, that it's not going to do a server side rendered thing in Rails. It's not going to make some MVC in Phoenix, even though those are clearly superior technologies. Instead, it's probably going to make you a broken React application. At least that's what happened when I tried it with Claude. And I guess to be fair, maybe that is the most human thing an AI could do, but this is not a talk about AGI. This is a talk about default answers becoming de facto solutions, right? So the idea here, right, is that anytime I'm using an LLM for some topic that I'm not super familiar with or where I don't want to do the work, I kind of just accept the result and it seems fine. I go to the next thing. LLM host is happy. You sent them money. Sure, maybe not enough money to cover the 5 billion losses of OpenAI this year, but maybe someday they'll get there. My concern is what if everyone is doing this, right? Do we get into this spot where we're all becoming a natural language programmer, but without any of the underlying skills required to evaluate whether those choices are actually good or just there because that's either the way they've been done or what comes out of the LLM? And so this is not exclusive to people who don't know anything about programming, although I think it's definitely going to be exacerbated by them, right? Hey, make me an app that shows like blue buttons and I want it to be about plumbing. They're just going to pick whatever the normal thing is. And maybe overall that's good, but there's still something sort of nagging at me about that. But in these kinds of scenarios where we're suggesting not really technical details, we're going to get back just whatever the default is. And the reason I know that is because if we wanted to give it all the technical details, we probably would just end up coding most of it. Right? The concern is not that, oh, LLMs will be able to like fill in the Tailwind classes to position this thing in a little box that I don't know how to do offhand. That's not really where the future of LLMs seem to be going. So, my question is then how does any new library, language, framework gain adoption in this world where the majority, maybe, of the programming or the work done is just the de facto default answer of whatever comes out of an LLM, particularly in the maybe worrisome cases of where people are building entire applications without any technical knowledge of what's going on? And not just for languages and frameworks, right? I'm also wondering how does something like a new cloud provider compete against existing cloud providers? The user might not even know that they are picking a cloud provider if they just accept the defaults, right? And so this is sort of one of the things that I feel like all of these people are saying, don't learn anything about CS. You're not going to need to know anything about it. You don't need to know about all of these different aspects of how the stack works together, how these pieces go, any technical details. The AI is just going to take all of our jobs and just do it perfectly. Right. And this is, of course, from all the people in the internet who are 18 months late on 6 months till no jobs. I do think AI is going to be disruptive. Don't get me wrong. It seems a very disruptive technology to me, but that's not the same thing as it's completely useless to know things. Those are two separate problems and two separate areas to weigh about what the most effective way to deal with the disruption of AI is. And so LLMs don't seek truth. It's not as if they're out there, this ability, like God's angels out here trying to find out what's good and bad, and we can consult this oracle and get back the truth from the heavens. That's not what they are. They are predictors based on their data of what the next likely things are. And that is like the most gross oversimplification of all time. I get that because they are incredible technology and letting us do things that I really was not imagining maybe even 6 months ago, let alone 5 or 10 years ago. But the attitude from the people here in this camp is we really don't need to worry about economics or incentives or reality. We can just trust the benevolent people running our LLMs. We can just trust that whatever is coming back out of the LLM is going to be trustworthy and good. Just like whatever the top 15 results on Google search results are amazing and good, and no one has ever gamed those. We can just have that same exact feeling from when I ask the LLM a question and I get back a response. That's the level of trust, right? That we should be putting in the LLM. We should be inspecting them, and we need to have some knowledge to be able to do that. And the other thing is here, while I do think malice is going to be coming into play from some of these aspects, this really does not require any malice to happen, right? If AI is great at generating TypeScript right now, then that means there will probably be lots more TypeScript tomorrow. Which does that mean then the next most likely thing to predict or suggest is also going to be TypeScript? It doesn't actually require us to have a situation where everyone is in this conspiracy, like cigar room, smoking cigars and saying, let's make TypeScript the language of the future. We really want to make everyone's life miserable. It doesn't require that. It's just that sometimes systems perpetuate the same things. And that's the first risk that I'm feeling worried and I'm not seeing discussed anywhere. The second aspect here is this idea of optimizing LLMs to return particular results. Just like people have spent, I cannot even fathom how much money trying to make SEO for their websites to show up in search engine results, right? We're going to have that for LLMs. And my concern is if that gets captured, what we're going to have is this LLM sort of nascent oligopoly of products, right? A new brand that is this small cabal of products that are the only things that are going to be suggested by LLMs. And that's where I'm sort of shortening this for LLMNOP, right? That's what we've got here, LLMNOP for short. And this can happen in a variety of ways. It can happen in the training data. Maybe you're going to just feed it tons more Svelte data than you are React, right? And you're trying to subvert everyone's expectations and get everyone to use Svelte. Seems cool. Seems like a cool technology. I don't know. Maybe I would vote for that one. But you could also do it in sort of what you're going to do when you're doing the training here. You can do it in the reinforcement learning where the people who are voting these up or down for whether they're good or bad or good suggestions or whether they're safe suggestions or not, those could filter out other kinds of options and make certain things more or less likely to be suggested. It could be in the prompts themselves. It could be explicitly in programming, like behind the scenes inside of OpenAI. It could be filtering out any suggestion to use Claude's API instead, or X's Grok, or how to download an open source model and run it locally on your machine. Any of those things could have biases put in that on the receiving side, we are not aware of and don't know are happening. They could even be doing that explicitly in post-processing steps with the true AI, right? Regeses and if statements. They could just be filtering out Claude. You would never know. And that reinforcement into this oligopoly is where the de facto thing becomes a much bigger worry for me. It's not so much of a worry if everyone is just getting to use React and their websites work just fine for them or whatever, right? The worry I have is that we will experience the same kind of decline that we had in Google search results inside of LLM results as the data and the training and the feedback is all poisoned by the interests of the people making those LLMs. Right? If there's 1,000x resources about React, how likely is it to suggest Svelte, right? Or if there's 1,000x resources about using Azure, why would it suggest using GCP? And this leads into that idea of this vertical integration that I see definitely happening, right? It doesn't require a lot of imagination to get here, where you could say, I'm inside of VS code, right? And I'm inside of there and I say, hey, deploy this to cloud, right? A naive user with a credit card. And so what happens? They say, sweet, let's pull in the Azure library. We'll install that for you automatically. When you click the little green button, that'll deploy on your GitHub Enterprise account, and then we'll deploy that to Azure. You probably need a 4 times the size thing that you actually need to make sure that we're charging that. And you can just see how this decision of the natural language thing, especially with no underlying understanding, can lead to a complete capture of the stack. You could be in a Microsoft editor using a Microsoft language, doing Microsoft tooling with a Microsoft Code Assist, using a chat application built by Microsoft to deploy to Microsoft's cloud on your Microsoft GitHub provider. Okay, I'm not even just picking on Microsoft. I think everyone wishes they could be doing this, right? Everyone wishes they could have that vertical integration. But that's one of the concerns that I really have, is that if we're just going to accept what the next likely thing is from the LLM, boom, they're going to want to capture that and get you to opt in a sense, opt in to all of their services, right? And this is not a macapitalism moment. One of the things that is a bigger worry or a bigger risk in this area is I'm worried that some of these large LLM providers are going to actually lobby for and receive a bunch of extra regulatory capture around LLMs. And the local LLM running on your computer isn't safe enough to be legal, so it's no longer legal to run LLMs on your computer. Or, oh, that small upstart LLM doesn't have all the same safety features we do, or the same legal, and so then they're not allowed to run that either. And so you end up with this scenario where LLMs are the de facto way of doing programming, and all of the other possible verticals that could be suggested by an LLM don't get suggested very often anymore, or at least not without prior knowledge. And then it becomes illegal to run other LLMs. So this is not a macapitalism, okay? I just want that to be clear. I'm also quite worried about this idea of regulatory capture in the space, and I don't know how that's going to play, right? Because if you have the tool that suggests all the other tools, that's a strong area that you would want to try and capture. And the last thing here that I really don't hear people talking about is this is like not just for programming. I mean, we're also going to have people making life decisions based on LLMs. They're going to ask, like, hey, what kind of shoes are really good for running? And it's going to suggest a pair of shoes. Wouldn't it be great if you were the top result? Hey, what's the best place to shop for healthy food? Wouldn't it be great if you were the top result? Hey, what's the most fun game to play to relax with my bros? Wouldn't it be fun if you were the best and top result? This is where I think we really need to be having some conversations about what we're going to try and do, how we're going to think about these things, and also where maybe we still are going to want to have humans in some of these loops, or maybe at least just for a while, to not let ourselves accidentally get caught up in a just feedback loop of companies training LLMs to suggest their own products, to suggest their own and you have this vicious loop and complete vertical integration that I'm not convinced is going to be the best for the consumer. So those are some of the risks that I would really like to hear people talk a little bit more about. Leave a comment. Let me know what you're thinking. I'm going to publish a few other videos about some thoughts on AI for the rest of this month, and that is the end. One quick note at the end here is a plug for me. If you like this video, if you like me talking, hey, if AI takes all our jobs, at least you'll be able to maybe write some WoW mods in Lua. If that's a dream of yours, I'm building a Lua course for boot.dev. You can go to boot.dev, use promo code TEACH, 25% off. That really helps me out. Okay, bye everybody, and I hope you enjoy the video. Thanks. Leave a comment. Okay, bye.